So just looking across this room, the world would be a much better place with you guys in charge. So that is the goal, and that is the inspiration of tonight. We are in a lot of a mess, as you guys know. The work I've done in the food industry is one example. Kids today have earned the title of Generation RX because of the rates of autism, food allergies, ADHD, asthma, diabetes, obesity. It goes on and on and on. And there's no 8-year-old on the planet that deserves that. So when I learned about what was happening to the US food system 12 years ago, I didn't want to tell this story. I didn't have the courage. I come from a super conservative family in Texas, and I went to very conventional conservative schools. Nothing I had ever been taught or told or illustrated to me in any way prepared me for what I was going to step into. But I have learned that love makes anything possible, and that courage is absolutely contagious. And so I stepped into a position and an advocacy work and a leadership role that absolutely terrified me. And before I gave that TED Talk in 2011, I said a prayer to let my heart speak. Because what has happened in our US food supply is completely unacceptable. US food companies make products here with artificial ingredients because they're cheap. Like Lauren said, I worked on an investment group that managed $20 billion in assets. And as the only woman on the team, the guys had me cover the food industry. As I learned that our own food companies made products here with artificial ingredients because it drove their profitability, while making totally different products with that same package. So if you're buying like a cereal bar in the US that's full of artificial stuff, and you buy that same cereal bar in Mexico or Europe or China or India or England or Australia, it's got real ingredients in it. In the US, the only place you go for real ingredients is Whole Foods. It's expanding. You can find organic in other places today. But as I looked at that, I thought, Whole Foods, whole paycheck. And that is not an affordable option to most people. And until clean and safe food is an affordable and accessible option to anyone who wants it, that is not a solution. So how do you make it an affordable and accessible option to anyone who wants it? So I began this career in the food industry. I started in this very conventional finance role in investments. But then when I landed in Boulder in 2000, we had these 4 kids. My youngest child had this allergic reaction, and all of a sudden I'm realizing this is not an option to most families. As I began to consult with the food industry, I said, you need to make these products affordable to everyone. The first multinational food company that I met with in 2011 was Nestle. I was flown out to Ohio to meet with their team. They were frozen. They were absolutely mortified of the junk that they're selling us. No one on that team was proud of the work that they were doing. And I said, what if you guys created a Nestle morsel? You know, the chocolate chips that are in every chocolate chip cookie. Create that Nestle morsel that is organic and allergen-free so that anyone who wants to buy it can buy it at a price point where anyone can buy it. That meeting was in April of 2011. 7 years later, I get an email from Nestle, and they say, we did it. We created this morsel. And I thought, holy cow, it took them 7 years. The reason it takes them 7 years is because today, something like 80% of us are buying something organic. It now has gone mainstream enough where you can find it in Walmart, you can find it in Costco. We're doing a better job of making it affordable and accessible. 80% of us are buying something organic. 75% of all grocery store categories carry something organic. Guess how much of our supply chain is organic? What percentage of US farmland is organic? 1%. That's why it's so expensive. The math doesn't work. So as I looked at that, and I met with families, and I met with corporations, I realized that they were not making these changes because most of them were governed by a board of white guys. And I thought, you know, you pull up the board of Nestle, there are 12 guys that look like the same guy. the same guy. And I wanted to ask those 12 guys, when's the last time you went through the grocery store and filled the whole cart? When I've met with members of Congress, when's the last time you went to the grocery store and shopped for your whole family? We do not have enough representation at the levels that matter most. We do not have them at the corporate level in governance. We do not have enough women. We do not have enough people of color. We do not have enough women, and we do not have enough people of color in governance at the highest level in this country, at the state level, at the local level, and at the federal level. And I promise you, we will not get to the solution until we do. So to bring it back to my work, 96% of farmers in the United States are white. 98% of the bankers that fund them are white. So you have a broken food system financed by a broken financial system that is completely homogenous, which is why I am here today. Because the world really needs you guys. We really need you to step into the extraordinary power that you are. You have demonstrated it time and time again on the track, on the field, on the court. And just as an athlete, you will join teams in your career. And those teams are either going to be winning teams or they're going to be teams that hold you back. And there is nothing worse than being on a toxic team. When you find yourself on a toxic team, move. Figure out what you need to do to move. When you need somebody to help pull you up, ask. I didn't have any female mentors, that's why I'm here today. Ask women who have gone before you what you need, how they can help. And look for people that want to see your light shine. You guys have extraordinary bright lights. You have extraordinary strengths. You have extraordinary talents. There are going to be people that are going to absolutely love you for that, and there are going to be people that will be absolutely threatened by it. Move towards the people who love you. Because that love, that energy is so incredibly expansive. When you feel safe in that place, whether you are playing on a team here or whether you are playing on a team 10 years from now, when you feel safe in that space, you can do remarkable things. And lean into this network that is CU. I am so jealous of you guys being part of the CU family. I cannot even begin to express how much I love this school. I feel so lucky to have moved here 21 years ago and to now be able to participate in these different ways as these different programs emerge. But the world needs all of you guys, and we need you in leadership. And I think about, I studied French and Spanish and German and Japanese when I was an undergrad. And the word for courage comes from the French word for heart, core. And I think when you're in that place where your heart is just, it's free, it's flowing, and that energy is coming through. And then you also know when you're in that place where it's just inward and it's internal and it's down. You've got to listen to that intuition. And I think women's intuition is remarkable. And the way I think about it now is how a car has the dashboard with all the lights. And if something's going wrong, those lights are telling you something's going wrong. You have that. You have that internal dash. Pay attention to it. Because it's actually telling you exactly what you need to know. And you know when you can move towards that person that absolutely energizes you. And there's that positivity that comes with them. And then there's the other person that's trying to sort of drain the light. Move away from the people that drain the light. And find those teams that help you play at your absolute very best. Because you guys already have the skill sets as athletes. I promise you, you have the skill sets. And the last thing I will say is I just turned 50 this year. Do everything you can to keep your knees. Keep your knees. I love Hoka. I love Hoka because it has helped me keep my knees. I still run every day. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't run every day. But whatever you can do to keep your knees, that is such a sound investment to keep your knees. But beyond that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, I did not have female mentors. There is now an extraordinary group of women that has come together in the food industry that represents the equity and the diversity that we know is needed. Wherever I can offer any kind of introduction or any kind of networking, please don't hesitate to ask. It is absolutely moves all of us forward when one of us moves forward. So be in touch. You can find me through Lauren. You can find us at replantcapital.com. You can also find me at robynobrien.com, but I'm here in Boulder. And so, before we get going into the speed dating networking thing, I'd love to open it up for some questions if you guys have some questions.
If you would have had a female mentor when you were younger, what was the one thing that you wish would have helped you with most?
I think I would have liked to have known more about the bro culture that exists in business. To know that I wasn't the only one navigating it. To understand that to step into your strength as a woman is a remarkable thing. You're not supposed to play like the guys. You are not supposed to play like the guys. You have skills and insight and intuition that are remarkable. And you will find yourselves in rooms and in meetings, and you will often be the only woman in the room. There are strategies to that, both on the professional level, and there are also strategies on the personal level, which gets back to keeping your knees so that you can pound it out or punch it out or whatever it is you need to do to process it. But I wish that I had been more informed on that culture that you step into still too often as a woman.
What's like some of the hardest adversity that you had to just deal with throughout your career?
That's a good question. So when I first began, the question is, what are some of the hardest adversities throughout your career? When I first began calling out our polluted food system, the tactics that were used to silence and threaten me were really very real. They were enormously intimidating. It's like the kind of stuff you see in movies. And I have a very, very deep faith. At that point, also, most people that were close to me stepped way back. So it was a very isolating time, and there were no resources. And so at that point, all you have is your intelligence and your integrity and your character. And there was nothing. I mean, there were no resources. And I think moving through that period and that isolation and that fear was one of the most challenging things that I have been through. In that lesson, I learned that fear is a seatbelt that wants to keep you locked in your comfort zone. And that's also where I learned you ask for help. So today, to have a team that I now have with Replant, I can't even begin to express the joy of having that team because of the persecution and the isolation that I went through 12 years ago. So, again, I think isolation, I can see why they use it as a punishment because it's extraordinarily hard. My entire family, my parents and my siblings, everyone stepped way back.
How can all of us in the room as women be caveats to change for the equality of compensation?
That's a great question. So how can each of us as women be caveats for change or catalysts for change? Don't be afraid to start small. Don't be afraid to start small. So, the parallel I give to that is, I think sometimes we think we've got to do it all perfectly or not at all. That is not the case. Focus on progress, not perfection. Do not make the perfect the enemy of the good. The very first speaking engagement I ever gave, 6 people came. So do not be afraid to start small. So it is maybe a group of 3 for lunch. In the food industry, we started with a group of 6 women to pull this together, and it has now just expanded. So my advice would be, don't be afraid to start small. Be afraid of not starting. That, I think, is the thing. And so, if it's a book club, because they're phenomenal books, if it's a monthly lunch that you put together, I think people feel really good when heads come together and they can collaborate and share ideas and also share frustrations. That would be my advice. Find a friend who feels as strongly about it as you do and start something. There was another one over here. Yeah.
Yeah, given just your challenges with isolation, the industry you're in, where do you seek your motivation? Is that spiritually, through motivational talks, books? How do you just keep going?
Yeah, my faith was really, really foundational in those very early years. I mean, my brother, there was a lot that was really dysfunctional in those early years, from the personal level to the threats that I received. And you guys will it was just head down, eye on the ball, head down, eye on the ball. That's what I kept thinking, head down, eye on the ball. And, that thing you hear on an airplane, you have to put on your oxygen mask first before you can help others. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is you take care of yourselves. It is so important. And that is part of your job. And any young women that come onto our team, that's what I tell them. I said, where in your day are you getting exercise? Because that's part of your job, is to stay mentally and physically healthy and strong. So my faith was a huge part of that. And then thank goodness I had always done a ton of sports growing up. And so, that discipline of exercise every day helped me process a lot of really, really tough things. And then I would say, besides the faith and the discipline, it's love. I mean, that sounds so corny, but it's, this work is such a love thing. And, when I would be at these parks and I would see these kids, or I'd be in these communities, I'd be meeting with families, and, I just thought, no one deserves what we have been handed as a country. No one deserves this. And it doesn't matter where we're from or what side of the aisle we're on or what color our skin is. When someone you love is diagnosed with cancer or autism or diabetes, our hearts all break the same way. And so to just have that as my compass all the way through, and something I do check, if I feel sort of an emotion, it's always making sure that it's governed by love and not by fear, because love as an energy is so expansive, and fear shuts people down. You're not going to motivate people by fear. You may motivate them for a little bit, but ultimately they shut down. So, what I learned was, it had to be a love thing. And so from that first talk of 6 people, to then be invited to give these TED Talks, to be invited to speak at Tony Robbins events, to be invited all these things, I thought, I've got to work on presentation stuff. So I studied people that had been presenting issues that society really was trying to reject. And with Martin Luther King Jr., he used love. His absolute vehicle was love. And then with Harvey Milk on gay rights, he used gratitude. And I thought, if I use love and I use gratitude, that opens people. It doesn't shut them down. So those have been the 2 sort of pools, the resources that I've always pulled from.
What do men typically get wrong in supporting women, whether it's in their personal life or the workplace?
Say that one more time.
What do men typically get wrong when trying to support women, whether that's personally or in the workplace?
What do they get wrong? Not all men, I will say. But I think it is the assumption that somehow their experience carries more value than the experience of the woman. And what I would say to that, and I think we need to do a better job as women, is that, think about this. Every single person that is on this planet, every single person on this planet is here because a woman was strong enough to deliver them. That's our power. And I think we have been conditioned, not necessarily by men, but society conditions us to somehow relinquish that power. In the US, we relinquish the power because we don't have decent maternity leave laws. We relinquish the power because we don't have equity in pay. That's the opportunity that I would love to see changed in our lifetime, is reclaiming that power. And I think there are remarkable guys that are really comfortable and really recognize how beautiful that power is. But it is a very different power to a man. And I think that's also something we really need to embrace and acknowledge. And I think, I would hope, I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I would hope, as my boys have witnessed this, it's partly a generational thing. It's partly a societal thing. And it's not like blame the guys kind of a thing. I think it's, as a society, we do so much better when there is equity, because this fabric that we weave together is so much stronger than any one thread. Is there another one over here?
I have one. How do you think you're able to kind of gain the respect from some of your male coworkers in the lives of kind of like, I'm so successful and respected by others?
Yeah, I was just sort of answering that question earlier today. So I have 3 kids in college and 1 that's a junior in high school. And when I got to college, I really was disciplined with my academics. And it continues to open doors for me today. And so I've told each of my kids as they head off to school, you will never regret the work you put in college. Because what happened was, graduating with the GPA I did out of college then got me a full scholarship to Rice, which then opened, the door for the Fulbright, which then 20 years later, Rice comes back and they say, we want you to be an adjunct professor. And I can honestly look, because I wasn't great in high school. I didn't really have it together in high school, academically. And when I got to college, I thought, now is the time to really get it together. And so I think that consistency, that discipline, that track record, it's not a fluke, by this point. You consistently show up and you put in the work. You guys do it all the time on these teams. I mean, some of these early morning practices are insane. You put in the work. And so it's that same opportunity. You just keep putting in the work. And I think, what's important, and I'm also telling my kids this right now, is make sure you're working on things that you love. When they're picking their majors, make sure it's something that you're actually really excited to do. And don't try to fit in anybody else's box. Because there is no one on this planet like each of you. You each have a very unique background, very unique skill sets, very unique talents, very unique interests. That's your power. And I think sometimes we think we need to conform or revert to some norm or some mean. It's really stepping into who you are. Because there isn't anyone like you. And that's actually what the world needs, is for you to light up and turn on who you are. Okay, I'm going to be sitting right here. If anybody has questions they don't want to ask in front of everybody, please come ask me. Please reach out online. I know how important it is. And I can't wait to see what this room does. And I'll check back in with Lauren 10 years and 20 years' time. So thank you, guys.